so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, I feel so happy to be here with you, amazing, talented, creative people, women. Today is something that we, at the film festival, we've really been trying to develop for a while. And last year, in collaboration with GYAL, which is Karen de Freitas, who is also one of the organizers of the festival. She's an amazing designer. We're actually both wearing her stuff today, and to big up Karen. And she started this organization called GYAL, which is basically about promoting positive representation of women's stories, and particularly in the Caribbean. So she had mentioned, I think it was last year as well, she had mentioned that we should do something in collaboration with the festival with women in film. And she mentioned that again this year, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned to you as well, Michelle, when we chatted, just about how, like, we were thinking through the festival how we can, support more women. And I guess for today as well, apart from hearing from all of you about your individual experiences, I also want to kind of like maybe like do a little bit of brainstorming in terms of like actionable things that maybe the festival can do moving forward, so that it's not just like us having a chat, although that is important, but that some actual like actions can come out of it. So to begin with, I wanted to just maybe start off with, maybe each of you could just like introduce yourselves a little bit for the audience, and just say like, who you are and a little bit about what you do. Michelle, you want to start us off?
Oh, wow. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle Serieux. Well, Zenzi, I go by Zenzi now. I'm a filmmaker. I live in St. Lucia. I'm in St. Lucia right now, but I consider myself a Caribbean filmmaker by vocation, because my dream has always been to be able to contribute to the development of cinema, not just in the island where I live, but as a group, because socioculturally, it makes a lot of sense, I guess, to do that. And that's how I identify. I have spent many years learning about cinema and practicing cinema, both in fiction and nonfiction. A lot of work of which like people have not seen, because I've also spent a lot of time developing and trying to figure out my own, I guess, journey and what to call myself and how to label the work and myself as I'm creating the work. So I'm comfortable with, I'm a Caribbean storyteller, working across different medium, but primarily nonfiction, cinema. Yeah.
Fantastic. Shantol?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Shantol Jackson. I'm a Jamaican actress, theater actress, first branching off into film. I've done 2 films, feature films and a short film, which was directed by Michelle Serieux. I hope we get to speak about it today, Sugar. I started acting in high school really because, I really needed an escape from my own reality. I grew up as an only child, and I wasn't in an environment where I could freely express myself. And the drama room kind of gave us that opportunity to express ourselves, tell our stories. And then eventually we started this mantra of giving a voice to the voiceless, stories that people felt like they couldn't tell or they weren't allowed to tell. And that's where my passion really developed, wanting to tell stories, wanting to tell important stories that people tend to find as taboo topics or topics that we tend to shy away from. Also, I did Sprinter, my very first feature-length film. And what excited me about Sprinter was the fact that we were doing a Jamaican film, a Caribbean film, that wasn't stereotyped. Most of the films coming out of Jamaica, we tend to look at one aspect, the gangsterness, which is a big part of our culture, you know, violence and stuff, zinc things, all of that. But we are regular people with regular stories, you know, regular problems with our parents, going through teenage drama, peer pressure, regular stories that we see on the on the international scene. And so I was very excited to be a part of a project that was showing Caribbean people in a normalized life and was showing the island, the beauty of the island, and not just one part of the island. So I'm also very invested in telling stories that are universal to all of us, Caribbean people, persons across the world. And I'm happy to be a part of this panel. My best friend Shanique is on this panel, and of course Michelle, who I work with, is on this panel. And I'm excited about this initiative. I didn't know about the festival before this year when it was introduced to me. So I'm excited that we are, you know, as Caribbean people and Caribbean women especially, we are doing more to bring recognition to the film industry. As I said, you know, we're big on theater here. Filmmaking is something that we are continuing to learn about and develop. So I'm excited to be a part of this. Thank you for having me again.
Of course, thank you. And I'm glad that you mentioned the that thing of kind of stereotyping or getting into this sort of like reductive representation of the Caribbean, which is basically just sort of, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, that kind of thing of like, all right, yeah, we can make films including Black people, but they have to be like about slavery or about violence, or so it's kind of like trying to be like, oh no, you know, actually, we have all the other kind of stuff going on as well, and like, you know, instead of just being totally reduced to sort of the most dramatic or challenging aspects. So, and then maybe a little bit later we can talk about specifically how that works with women and stereotyping women in films as well. Shanique, so nice to see you. I love your background, by the way. That's so cool.
Hi again, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy to be a part of this discussion. Honey, hi. I am a singer, songwriter, actress. Just like Shantol, similar to Shantol, I started out in theater, and then, you know, we made a transition to film. My main reason for just being a Caribbean creator, a Caribbean female creator, is because I believe that as a people, we have been socialized to think that there are certain things that we feel that we shouldn't talk about. There are certain things that we feel that, you know, we should just ignore. And I don't believe that. Just like what Shantol said, we are people, we are humans just as well. And I can't help but tackle it from the standpoint of being a woman, a Caribbean woman, a Jamaican woman, you know? Why am I not supposed to feel this way? Why am I not supposed to talk about these things? And so I'm very happy that, you know, not just my music, but acting and film, and more so Caribbean films, are affording us the opportunity to have these conversations and to let other women just like us know that it's okay, contrary to what you've heard or been told. It's okay to feel. It's okay to talk about how you feel, and it's valid. So I'm really, really, really looking forward to our conversation here today.
Wonderful. It's so great to have you. And Melanie?
Hi, everyone. First, thank you for having me here. Well, my name is Melanie Grant. I am born in Barbados, but currently living in St. Vincent. And like Michelle, I define myself as Caribbean. My mom is Trini, my dad is Vincentian, born in Barbados. I feel connected to that identity. My background is in film. I did my undergrad in film at UWI. And that's where I also did courses in gender studies. And that kind of like opened up my mind to how I can marry those two passions and use film to talk about, you know, the experiences of women in the Caribbean. And then after that, I went on to do visual anthropology. And I'm a bit of a shy person, so my films kind of speak for me. You know, there are people who could go out and go in the streets and with placards and stuff like that, and that's their approach to tackling things, and that's one approach. But I kind of like to stay in the background and let my films just put them out there and let them do their thing. So that's yeah, a bit of my approach to film.
I hear that. Oh yeah, can I just jump in and just add, right, I forgot to talk about I guess educational background too, because definitely I think one of the reasons I resonate so much with Melanie's work, I have a background in cultural studies as well, and like I see how you're questioning a lot of, I guess, post-colonial issues that we are dealing with here in your work, and I really appreciated seeing that. Anyway, so yeah, my background, I did media at UE, Mona, as well as acting and stuff at Edna Manley College, and I had a background in theater as well as cultural studies and drama, and then did grad school in New York, film and media studies at Columbia, and when I was done with that, did a professional producing certificate at NYU, and along the way, a lot of courses, because I love learning and always figured, it makes sense to just build a skill set. So all of that informs, I guess, all of the work, right?
Amazing. I mean, that's a perfect segue into, I mean, first of all, like, before I met any of you personally or virtually, I encountered all of your work along the way and was just like so, just full of admiration for the talent, and not just the talent, but I think like I felt like a lot of what I saw you guys working on just really resonated with me. I felt like maybe like supported through seeing the work, seeing the things that
it's true. Absolutely, for real. Like just seeing the work. I hadn't met Melanie and I hadn't met you, but I remember seeing Hog Hole and being like, oh my God, I've been seeing this work. It's so cool. Like, it's so amazing. And then I had seen Book of Jasmine, but just the other night I was looking at You Have Eyes, right? And I had to, because I know I'd been inundating you with email. I had to stop. Michelle, just wait until until you get to talk to say, because it just felt, okay, yes, aside from all the insecurity that you feel that there might not be an audience for your work or the type of questions that you're asking in your work, to see another filmmaker tackling it and being so brave, because you say you're shy, but you're in the work in a way that, a lot of people, I think, would hesitate to do, but it's so necessary and it's so distinctive. So I felt a real sense of solidarity knowing that the two of you exist out in the world, and I feel like we should have a nonfiction roundtable one day with Caribbean women doing nonfiction stuff. But that's yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's also maybe one of those actionable things that we can take away from this. So the work. So of course, like Michelle, your film Sugar, it just really blew me away, and I know we all have this thing as well, like, for example, when I watch back certain stuff, maybe you guys have this or not, I'm just like, like, but if only that was like that, or this,
I could have done that. Yes.
You're just like, any little thing that people would never notice, you're like, oh no, why did I even, what I mean?
I shouldn't have done that. Yes.
And I think
it's true, but it's part of the.
Go ahead.
No, I was saying exactly what you're saying. It's part of the process of, like, learning to grow and let ourselves grow and look back and say, yeah, I may not have done that now, but it's where I was as a filmmaker, and celebrate the work anyway. That has been a really difficult part of the journey for me. That bit, like, not beating myself up about what shoulda, coulda, would have been, and how this thing could have been and whatnot. And I think it's definitely something, you brought it up, that we all share. And it's one of those things that might be gendered. I don't know, but we talk about it.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah. So let's talk about that, about your film Sugar, because the main character in that film, she basically, well, tell us about it. Tell us about that and.
There went my phone. I'm back. I was reaching for this, right, to show Shantol. Yes. There you are. Right? So Shantol is the star of Sugar. Sugar is a film that's an adaptation, actually, by a wonderful Jamaican writer named Sharon Leach. Now, Sharon is someone who I guess had just decided to step into the film world, and she came with so much fear. It was really a journey, just walking with Sharon and going through the process of developing Sugar into the short film. But Sugar is about so the short story is in one of Sharon's anthology books. But the film is about a young woman who works at a hotel at a resort and has a specific financial issue come up and thinks eventually is forced into thinking that this tourist couple might be the solution to her difficulty. That's it in a nutshell. Shantol, what is Sugar about to you?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. One of my takeaways from Sugar was Michelle is the kind of director, she always says she doesn't believe in telling the actor what to do exactly. So she would ask me a lot of questions. I read the script and she says, okay, if you're in this particular situation, what would you do? Because she wants it to be as real as possible. So it wasn't just acting. I literally had to become Sugar, place myself in this situation. And these are issues that females, especially young girls, deal with all the time. You're from a particular background, you don't get the education that you'd want, not because you're not smart enough or you're incapable, but you don't have enough funds to do it. And so this girl is now working her way up, and then all these things coming at her. You have a mother who is not the best example, and then you have siblings to take care of. You take on this responsibility of taking on siblings. You have to work, you have your own plans and goals, and you want to achieve it. And then something pops up, an opportunity pops up, which is not in line with your goals. And you now have to make a choice. Do I go against my morals to achieve my goals? Do I stay in this situation that I can't see any way out of? What do I do? And I feel like these are questions that especially females ask themselves all the time. And it's really because, most of us, we weren't born with a gold spoon in our mouth, we didn't get the easy way. And so you have to decide, which journey or which path am I going to take to get to this specific destination? And you think about all these things. If I do it, will I be judged? How will I be perceived? You tell yourself you do it one time and that's it. And then something else comes up and you're like, oh, and you find yourself doing it 10 more times. And you lose yourself, you lose your self-confidence. So many things get lost along the way. And a lot of times, because we don't have the support, in the film, there are two other women working on at the hotel who, you'd want to be your friends or, persons who are encouraging you along the path, and they're the total opposite. So everywhere you go, there's just negativity and toxicity hitting you. What do you do there? What's your option at that point? And that's really what Sugar was for me, asking myself all those questions and then saying, well, there are actual females who are going through this. What did they do, or what is their option? What's the option for them?
Yeah, and also I'm glad that you talked about like Shanique's character. Shanique is also in the film, and basically and I think this is something else that I think contributes to our struggles as women is the tendency to kind of turn against one another and like sort of tear each other down. I think that there's a certain maybe maybe that comes from jealousy, and maybe all of that is kind of constructed through, I don't know, we could say like the patriarchy or whatever that has sexualized women to such a degree that now we turn that against each other, and it's like this competitive, that I think that could be one way of looking at it. But what do you guys think?
Well, I think specifically with regards to the two of them's relationship, Shanique, let me just say this one thing. in your backstory, in the backstory building for both of the characters, y'all remember what the conflict was? Somebody had, it had to do with a guy. So
Yes.
we built all of these backstories way, way, way back. So these two girls had history from they were in high school,
Which is
right?
usually
And
the
so,
case.
do you remember, Shantol? And it was centered over some competitive
It's
thing
usually the case.
or a
Always
guy.
have to do
Shanique,
with
do you remember?
football.
I told Shantol, I didn't tell Shanique, but sorry, Shanique, go ahead.
Oh yes. I do remember the backstory that we created to fuel that interaction. And you're most definitely right, Aiko. The way we've been kind of quote unquote socialized to interact with each other, it manifested itself there, because if you really think about it, there wasn't really a good reason why my character was that nasty to Sugar. Like there really
Yes,
isn't
it
a
was
justification.
horrible.
It's just learned, like, yeah, competition. Yeah, man, I look, I don't like you. This is what it is. I got cuss you, I make you feel bad. And based on her backstory, it's like she has her own issues to focus on. And instead of focusing on those issues, her main thing was just being mean and competitive with Sugar.
And that's something that we've probably all encountered at various points, you're just like, why is this person just off? Like,
Why?
what did I do? Like, and
Yeah.
then you're just there, you're like, okay. And then someone's like, well, maybe it's jealousy. And you're like, but I'm just trying to live my life, like you know what I mean? And I think, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to really get to the root of like how you kind of undo
Why?
those mechanisms, and at a certain point you just have to be like, all right, like I accept that this is how the world works. Like some people are living compulsively. They're not like looking at themselves and being like, wait, why am I behaving like this? Maybe that's not the person I want to be. They're dealing with their own shit, a lot of bullies, a lot of people like that. I had a childhood bully, and boy, oh boy, I was just like, wow, where is this coming from?
Right.
We
have bullies in adulthood.
Oh,
We
yeah.
have bullies in your field, in your
Exactly.
workspace. I think it's like not definitely what you said, Aiko, understanding like adults, even as adults, they have some high school stuff still going on, like things they did not resolve when they were in high school, and have to play out these cliquish things, and I'm not going to talk to you because my friend don't like you and whatever. But I think it's also just understanding, to having a framework to understand how patriarchy works in your interpersonal relationships as well. And so with those two characters, it could have even been that the boy told one something bad about the other, and it wasn't even true. He could have just made up some shit to make himself look good. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. And I think it's a huge part of, I guess, my journey and women's journey, to be able to, at whatever point it happens, and I wish it would happen for us earlier, like I wish it had happened to me earlier, just stop and recognize how patriarchy works and how it works in just the multiple spheres that we operate in as women, as human beings, and like step back and be able to separate yourself from it and know, okay, that's about them, it's not about me. And to decide who it is that you are going to be, how it is you're going to show up in the world for yourself and for the other people, other women and other people who do support you and who do, know you and who you want to show up for, and just deciding to be yourself regardless of other people and their stuff. Like they're on their own journey too. So compassion and detachment, that's the tools that I've had to learn to incorporate to deal with stuff,
Absolutely.
Compassion and detachment in a lot of ways. Yeah.
No, I think that's really on point, and also I think like knowing as well that certain days it's gonna be easier, right? Certain days you're gonna be like, oh, I'm totally unbothered. Like anybody who wants to hate, they can hate, and other days you're gonna just feel a little more crushed underneath it, and just riding those ups and downs as well, kind of holding on to those ideas. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like, so so basically, like we've all worked in situations where our gender has informed our work, right? And kind of in some ways it's hard not to do that as a woman, right? Because this is your experience in the world, and innately it is different to what a man would experience in the world. So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, like, for each of us, like, what makes up a Caribbean woman? Like, it's quite a broad term. So when you think about that, you know, there's like the Caribbean woman that, the image of the Caribbean woman that might be exported, you know, so like for a specific person in another country, like, oh, exotic, or, you know, whatever, like all of these things, like what does it mean for us being Caribbean women? How is that different? Because we're, you know, we're from different countries here. How is that different in each of our countries?
Melanie, you have to say something. Unmute your mic and talk.
It's such a difficult question. I'm here thinking, how do I define it? Because even if I think about the women in my films, like all my films are grounded in some sort of research. They're based on people, or, you know, they're documentaries where you're filming these women, and they're all just so incredibly different. Like I'm trying to find like a commonality that I can give, and it's, I don't even know where to begin.
Well, I think that that's a valid point, because there are limitations, even when thinking like, oh, we're having a panel about Caribbean women in film. Like, what does that mean? That's really broad, you know?
Right.
And I know, like, okay, that's a starting point for us to come together and talk, but like, you know, so in some ways, like even these labels can be reductive in a certain way. Like we want to be people, not just women. Like I know when I walk to the beach in St. Vincent by myself, it's not the same experience as if I was a man, right? Yeah. It's uncomfortable. And sometimes I just don't even want to go, right? Because I just want to be like on my own. I want to go. I want to just process what I'm processing. I want to have my little meditation. And it's just, you know what I'm saying? And so on the one hand, we don't want to be reduced to these things. And on the other hand, they are really serious things that affect, you know, our experience in the world.
I guess the one thing I could think about is power relations. If you think about how we are all in every space navigating that, and most of my films, there are queer characters and their power relations there that they're navigating. And then even in the women within the spiritual Baptist space, even though it's 95% women, I would say it's still a very male dominated space. So just if I can connect all the women that I've sort of like had as characters in my films, like that's the only thing I can think of, them navigating these relationships of power constantly on a daily basis.
Yeah, because that's what it's like, right? You kind of wake up and you're like, and someone's like, oh, you're a woman, therefore this. And you're like, oh, you're this race, therefore this. And you learn about how the world has decided what you are before you even know it. And you have to kind of negotiate that identity with what you feel like you are on a deeper level as well, you know, and look at those kind of coexisting.
And that's so true. Sometimes you even find yourself like almost apologizing for being who you are. You're just like, oh. Sometimes you have to catch yourself like, wait, no, I'm not gonna apologize. Don't apologize. This is who I am. Yeah. And I ask that you're accepting of that. And you have to catch yourself doing that quite a bit sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it's interesting because I think there are two things I want to say. I'm trying to pull them together. It's two things. One, so how do you define yourself as a Caribbean woman? I identify as an Afro-Caribbean woman primarily. Well, 70%, I did the genealogy test, etc., whatever, from Central Africa and whatnot. But Aiko, I'm finding out I might actually have Vincentian heritage. I have a great grandma who may be from Kanawha. Yes, right? So we know there's the Amerindian, yes, all of that happening and stuff. But I identify as a Black Caribbean woman politically and everything else. And I think for me, the journey has been kind of the opposite. Like I find it so expansive and limitless, me just embracing that womanhood and that my Afro-Caribbean womanhood. And that has come from an experience that I had, a very traumatizing experience that I had that brought me to my ancestors, to a better understanding of myself spiritually, and to a better understanding of myself as a woman. All of the limitations and the harassment and the horrible things that we have to contend with, none of that has stopped. I think what has happened for me is that I've come off of the plantation in like a real serious way and have like been able to actively name, okay, so this is that, this is that, this is that, and these are the tools that I'm going to have to use to navigate this. One of those tools in Jamaica, unfortunately for me, had to be to have a big Jeep to protect myself, to shield myself from the ferocity of the kind of harassment and stuff that you would experience. Like Shantol, then smiling because you know it's off the, like it's next level stuff over there, you know. And it's sad that you have to do those things and think twice before you leave the house and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I think we have to definitely train the men and get them to bear the burden of the responsibility of the oppression that they have, you know, meted onto us. It should not be our burden to bear. And in the meantime, we have to figure out like how to navigate in the world as freely as we choose to be, despite that stuff. I think I said what I want to say. Yeah.
You know, one of the best things that has happened to me to date is enlightenment and self-acceptance, because what has happened, persons outside of the Caribbean and even persons within my own country have this idea of what a Jamaican woman or a Caribbean woman should be. And I've experienced it even with some tapes I would receive sometimes from casting. They would sometimes send me up for mysterious roles or roles where women are exotic looking and they're like, you're so exotic and you
holding
have the
snakes,
eyes
like
you know, and I enjoy those roles and I enjoy them, yes, but I'm not limited to just telling those kind of stories. And so sometimes when I travel and I speak to persons and they talk about Jamaicans, they have this idea of us, you know, where we all smoke weed and we're all kicking football on the beach. You know, people to this day honestly think that that's all that we do and that's all that we are. When I think of a Caribbean woman, I think of even when I did Yardi and they asked me, you know, you're playing a lead female role. What did you draw from to assist this character in character development? And I think I'd say my own mother, my own aunts, how you're raised in the home. We're very traditional in how women are raised in the Caribbean. Outside of that, or or fashion, the type of, we season our meat. You understand? There are so many things that make up the Caribbean women and who we are, but none of these things limit us. None of these things place us in a box. However, people think that they do. And I think the best way to defeat or just eliminate that thought process altogether is to create our own stories and put out our own work that shows that we aren't limited to just washing, cooking, and cleaning and ironing. We aren't just limited to taking care of the man and the household. We aren't just limited to bearing children and taking care of the children. We are well-thinking individuals. We are researchers. We are scientists. We ask questions. We are aware of the things that men will pose, the threats that men will pose. We are aware that, okay, if you're walking on the road, you have to be vigilant and look all. We are aware of these things now, a lot more than our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents were. Not to their fault, but the reality is we are more aware now. And so we have to, for ourselves as well, because before I had a lot of issues with my body. I thought, you know, I was way too skinny. My friend would tell you I would not wear a swimsuit on the beach, because when you think of a Caribbean woman is voluptuous. You know, you have the nice bottom and the shape and all of that. You don't have a nice round big bottom, you understand? I don't have all these nice things that make up the traditional Caribbean woman. And so I would feel less than. And I would feel like, okay, because I don't look a particular way, then I'm not entitled to wearing certain clothes. We face colorism. Because I don't look a particular way, I probably won't get a certain ad on TV. And I would literally just stop going to certain auditions. I would literally just wear certain type of clothes. I'd literally go to certain places because I feel like I wouldn't be embraced or accepted in other places. And I had to get rid of that mentality altogether. And I find that when you get rid of that mentality and you're aware of who you are, who you identify as, and you step out into the world as that, then nothing can defeat you. You are now able to tell your own story and walk in your own life. And people just start respecting you differently. People approach you differently because you are taking yourself more seriously and putting yourself out there in a different light, which is why I always say, tell your own stories and be careful of the type of stories that you are telling and putting out there.
Can I just add to that? I agree with everything that you're saying. You know, I think a lot, like I ask people to think a lot about when we think of, say, an African woman, what are we thinking about? Or an Indian woman, what are we thinking about? And we have very limited representations that we get on this side of the world. We're fed so much American media that based on that, we form these stereotypical ideas of what these women in these different parts of the world are. And when we are filmmakers in the Caribbean, there's so much limited content that is being put out there, and we have to be conscious
about us.
Have a responsibility to say, like, Hollywood has 1 million and different films, right? That you can pick and choose, and there's so many varying different representations going on. If we're putting out 1 or 2 or 3 a year, that's what people are seeing of us. That's what people are forming their ideas of us around. Like, so we have responsibility. Yep. Conscious creators. And going through the script writing process, I just finished writing a film. I'm always like, you know what are people going to think about that? How are they going to read that? You know, if I send this to somebody in Italy, like, how are they going to watch it and perceive women in this part of the world? Like, I'm so to the point where I censor myself a lot. But you have to be like, this is what we're showing the world. They're not getting all these different ideas of who we are. And that's why people have these ideas of Jamaican women being a certain way, because for so long, that is the single image and the single stories that they have been seeing. So they formed it based on that. But like, yeah, so that's just my point. Like, we have to be conscious of what are we saying, what messages, what stereotypes are we challenging, subverting, or what are we, stereotypes are we upkeeping in our work?
100%.
Yeah, and just to add to what,
and I think a lot of that. Go ahead. Sorry. No. Go ahead, Shanique.
Okay, just to add to what Shantol and Melanie just said, you know, it was very heartbreaking for me. Whenever Shantol would say things like that, and I remember getting angry a lot, because I was just like, who is going to fix this? Okay, so whereas Shantol might have a support system, that might help her to understand that she's beautiful, she shouldn't allow these things to define her beauty and how she goes out into the world, whether or not she wears a 2-piece bath suit on the beach. Like, okay, she is now enlightened, but who is going to do that for the other young girls and young women? You know, how is that going to be addressed on a larger scale? Because it's rampant. That feeling is rampant, and it's heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking, and people don't realize how heartbreaking it is. It sounds very simple to some people. Oh no, man, I better watch that. You know, some man say no, but it affects you on so many levels. It affects
so many levels.
Date.
Yeah.
It affects how you dress. It affects how you speak in a conversation. It affects every single thing. It affects how you create. You'll be on a set and they'll say, okay, so this is your costume. It's heartbreaking. And I'm so happy that we have women coming up now. And there are a couple men, I'll give them that, who acknowledge that and who are trying to break that cycle. Because man, it affects so much. It affects so much.
it affects things that you don't even realize are related to those, like, they're not even microaggressions, they're huge aggressions, and the little ones too that you deal with on a daily. It affects if you decide to leave your house, if you feel comfortable walking up the road today or not. But it also, in little insidious ways, like, as part of my own journey towards emancipating myself from just bullshit, like, I had to really stop and assess in what other areas of my life was I allowing, like, patriarchal values and stuff to influence me, and, like, indirectly affect my self-esteem, and and how was that showing up, like, in my creativity, and how was that showing up in other areas, because it's all linked. Like, I try really hard, unsuccessfully most times, to compartmentalize my life, but I realize, like, you can't. Everything is connected. It is all connected. You know, if you live in a household where you grew up seeing your mom constantly, being subjugated by your father, even though he might think you're the biggest rebel, whatever and stuff, that affects you psychologically. And you may not, in your everyday.
Sorry. But
in your everyday encounters, you might think you're this big bad wolf and you deal with stuff, but then there might be this little thing where you allow someone to just walk over you, and you don't think of yourself as the person that would allow that. But then you realize, oh my God, yeah.
And you have to think about these things, because if you want to become a mother, you need to think about the patterns that you have unconsciously that you might pass on to your own children. And these are like things about, like, I like to talk a lot about awareness, because I've had these moments in my life when my awareness has like expanded suddenly, and they're like life-changing kind of moments, right? Because you look, there's like a before and an after.
Yes.
And I was thinking about what Shantol said.
Yes.
And I was thinking about all of, like, my own, like, being a teenage girl, and how I felt about my body, like how ugly I thought I was, and how, like, like, why am I not like this? And I was like a late bloomer. They, like, it's such a ridiculous thing, a late bloomer. No, you're just a human being. Like, it's so silly. But when I went to school, when I was 16, I left Simmons and I went to a school in Wales, and it was like, we lived in a dorm, right? So it was 4 people in one room, a little room. And I was so self-conscious, and the showers were just like, it was just a room with shower heads coming out of it, one little curtain. And I would get inside my closet, which was this big, to change. And I would just be in there thrashing around. It was just like, because I just felt so self-conscious, and then I went through a process of unlearning that myself, and like, and I wanted to talk a little bit about socialization, and that's generally what we're talking about here, and a process of really kind of decolonizing yourself from these ideas that have been imposed upon you, and how liberating it feels, like, when you're like, no, I'm gonna do what I want, I'm gonna wear what I want, and when you can throw off that weight, it is a weight, right, that you carry. And like you're saying, Shanique, it is heartbreaking. It is such a weight. And when you realize you have the power to free yourself, and it's nobody else is gonna do it, it's you that's gonna do it for yourself, right? And what are, in terms of like
100%.
unlearning, what are some things that, you guys, like, what kind of processes might you have gone through with unlearning, or decolonization of yourself, or?
So last night, and it's very interesting that we're talking, last night I was sharing with someone an experience, because something happened in Jamaica yesterday. It's been happening, but a particular instance of it has really hit us hard. And I was discussing, just being a woman in the performing arts with somebody last night. And I went back to being in a production where my character was she was a goodie. So I had to walk around in a production like that. And I remember right before we were to go on and perform, somebody thought it was okay to slap me on my bottom, to like spank me. And I remember there was a split second in my head where I was just like, they're gonna say it's not a big deal. it's nothing to get upset about. And then something said, no, this is my body. That you have no grounds on which to do that and think it's okay and expect me not to say something. And I remembered there was this like huge wave of fear that came over me right before I addressed the person. And the minute I like expressed myself, as you said, I felt like this huge burden was lifted off of me because I felt violated. And I got angry with myself right after because I was just like, how dare you begin to think that it's okay for him to do this just because of what society says. You have a right to say what you have to say. It's your body. You know, not because you're here portraying a particular character. The character doesn't necessarily stand for that. So you shouldn't stand for that. It was just very tumultuous. It took like, the whole interaction took like 45 seconds. But all of that happened in that 45 seconds. And that has influenced how I carry myself on sets up to this day and how I navigate things like that.
Being firm about your boundaries. Give thanks that you were able to speak up. As you said that, I just remembered one time, some students at Mercy Cole Hall, I used to be a resident advisor there, and we were doing a workshop. I was doing a little environmental film workshop with them. And we were outside, and these delivery guys were coming in, and they kept on sitting the girls and just, you know, harassing them. And I stopped and I said to them, look, we're doing something. You need to leave them alone, etc., whatever. And except whatever it is I said to them and sent them on their way. Not realizing that that had such an impact on them that they went back and told the student services manager how blown away they were that I spoke up, because a lot of women do not feel comfortable speaking up, because sometimes you speak up and the situation escalates, you know? And so it's the having to navigate.
Everyone's nodding.
Do you speak up, do you not? But
yeah.
Right. But also learning to speak up for yourself and show up too, because you're not necessarily doing it for yourself. You're doing it for some other young girl who is seeing through your behavior what is acceptable, what is possible, and what's not for her. So we always have to remember that as well. It's not just for us, you know?
Yeah. I had an experience last summer that kind of really highlighted the way I've internalized the same thing of like, oh, just laugh it off, or like just whatever, like leave or whatever, you know. And it was one of my close guy friends who was like, yo, that guy is doing this thing and that's not okay. Are you comfortable with that? And I was like, no, I'm not. But, you know, I was just like, I'm leaving anyway, like whatever. I just, you know what I mean? And I really had to stop and think about navigating all that stuff again, of just like, wow, like I shouldn't feel that way. I should say something. I should speak up. Why is it that I've internalized this thing? And it is because of this, because of the amount of times you've been in a situation where you've said something and you've essentially they've tried to punish you for it.
Right, to punish you for it. Yes.
It's almost a self-preservation thing at that point. You're like, okay,
right,
this kind of short-term conflict here or something, or, you know, to avoid this to sort of escalating. But like you say, at the end of it, it's about creating almost a pattern of behavior for yourself, for you to use in those circumstances to navigate those situations, and becoming aware, you know, and standing up for yourself. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, like, in terms of socialization, like what is going on with our men, you know, because I find like oftentimes, you know, I'm very aware of like the sort of victim oppressor narrative and this kind of binary. And I know that sometimes that can strip us of a certain kind of agency. And even though that is the dynamic, I think nothing exists in isolation, right? Everything is connected. It's an interrelationship between women and men, like on a social sphere. This is a dynamic involving these two genders. And so, like, you know, women on one side for just to, you know, reduce it for the sake of the conversation, and like men behaving in a certain way, obviously not all men, you know, in a certain way on the other side. And what is it that is occurring within our societies that is leading to such high levels of rape and femicide and harassment?
Entitlement. It's this sense of entitlement. I feel that there is a level of non-accountability that starts from young. The boys go outside and play and climb the trees and whatever, and the girls stay indoors and do these skills, these things that, you know, make them successful in school. But it's just a different level of accountability that women are forced to, you know, answer to, you know, why you do this, why you do that, whatever. But then boys get to go and impregnate girls. There's no consequence. Just like a sense of entitlement to our bodies, to our work, to our creativity, to our ideas, because they've been reared in a society where they were privileged. They were just privileged. Their everything was developed around catering to them. I don't know. Well, I guess we know where that came from, I imagine. But it's a matter of, I guess, right now, who is the new Caribbean woman, and will she continue to allow herself to be subjugated and treated like a secondary, you know, a second-class citizen in the society in which she was raised? And I mean, that doesn't happen everywhere, because I think a starting point is that gender balance starts within the self. We each have a masculine and feminine within us, and like have to be able to be balanced and know like at which point what side of us needs to lead. Because I've known men who were beautiful beings, who are not like the toxic macho, you know, stereotype that we, or person that we're talking about when we talk about this. So I think it's a matter of them even being willing to understand that we've been socialized in a way that privileges them, and they need to do the work to change themselves and meet us halfway, you know? We can't always be blaming Eve for all the problems. You know, Adam was a huge part of the problem. So yeah, let me stop before I.
No, I think, yeah, that's very apt.
Fortunately for me, well, fortunately and unfortunately, in terms of harassment from men, I've experienced that within the home and on the streets. But fortunately, I'm yet to experience that on set or in the industry. And what I've done, I was talking about this because I was going through the email and stuff, and I was talking about this morning. I've literally put myself in a position to somewhat avoid or prevent certain things from happening. I remember when I just started traveling, when I just did Yardi and Sprint, and I was doing a lot of promotions and I was traveling, I always wanted my manager there. I didn't want to go to a party without her. I didn't want to go to a meeting without her, because I felt like I didn't want to be alone, you know. And at the time, the Me Too movement was going on. I'm hearing and seeing all these things. And I'm like, I'm not going to leave myself vulnerable. I remember there was one particular situation. We did the ADAs and there was the after party, a white party. And they told me my manager couldn't come because she wasn't on the list. And I'm like, well, why she can't come? If she's not coming, I'm not coming. For two things. One, I mean, she's my manager. She's there with me. This is a win for when me win, I feel like everybody win. And so she's supposed to be a part of this with me. And two, I'm in unknown territory. I'm with these Americans. I don't know anything about these people. I'm a young, you know, little slim girl and thing going to this place. Anything can happen. I don't want to be there alone. I'm not going there alone. If it is that I can bring someone with me. Of course, you have to turn up to these events. You have to network. You have to go to meetings. But how do you prepare yourself to go into these places? How can we prevent certain things from happening? Because the reality is, anything can happen at any time. It's what happens after it happens, or what you do to prevent a certain thing from happening. And so after watching all these things on TV, Lupita and all these persons coming out and saying, you know, this thing actually happened to me at this point. If my manager couldn't come into a room with me, she was sitting right outside. She wasn't far away. The first very big event, she couldn't come. I was terrified. I was freaking out. I was like, I don't want to go if you're not there. And I had to evolve, because the reality is someone won't always be there with you. You know, in Shanique's situation, of course, there are a lot of persons around, but she was the only person walking past when this person decided to do that. Sometimes you have to be able to defend yourself in a particular situation, and you have to be prepared to do that. And she has given me certain tools, you know, so that when I'm going into certain situations, I know how to conduct myself. I know, you know, okay, is this safe or wise? Should I put this off? Should I do a Zoom instead of an in-person? We have to now think of, okay, how can we protect ourselves? Because the reality is we don't have a lot of persons protecting us. And in the same way that men are predators, you have women who are predators as well. Women who will set you up, women who will do just unthinkable things. And so we literally have to now decide, how best can I prevent certain things from happening in this industry, in this creative industry that I've decided that I'm going to stick to, this journey that I'm going to be on. And then I have several people, I'm sure all of us have people in our inbox who are looking on to us as believe that we are, you know, we inspire them and we're role models. Every time somebody says that to me, I'm taken aback, because I'm like, I'm still learning. You know, there's so much I still need to learn. I don't think I'm ready to be a role model, but the fact is you are. And so we have to be setting examples for these persons. And I made a post recently on my social media, and I said, I'm so happy that I've learned the lessons that I've learned, and I've received the enlightenment that I've received before I've start having my own children. Because these are things that, you know, probably if your parents knew, or your parents knew how to articulate to you from an early age, then you wouldn't have to be facing certain things, or you'd have the proper tools to go out and deal with them. And so I'm so glad that these things are happening to me now, before I have my children, before I have my own daughter, before I have my son, so that when them come, I already have the wisdom to pass on to them. Because these are things that, you know, we had to learn ourselves, and we had to prepare ourselves for.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the world is full of dangers, right? And I think like being realistic about that, and like you say, taking that into account and taking the steps that you need to do, so you're not naive, you know, like, and sometimes you have to learn things in a difficult way before you're like, right, that's how this works, that's the dynamic. Okay, what am I going to put into place now? And just try to be practical about it, while also healing from your trauma, because it is traumatic. It's traumatic. And I think it's a burden, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh really, we have to like birth children and also be socially oppressed? Like, who made this up? Like, you know. And but within that we have this incredible power, and we have this incredible voice because of what we are. And you know, and in terms of like, there's actually an interesting question here from the audience, which is
in the chat. Yeah, I was just looking at them.
Yeah, there's AC asks if there's a particular Caribbean female biopic or character that you'd like to take on.
Yes.
Definitely.
Sorry, finish the question. I'm just being
No,
idiot.
that's the
I'm just being
question.
happy. Go ahead, finish. Right. Is there a biopic? Yes. So, oh God, there are so many really inspiring stories that I'm unearthing now, which was I guess when I say now, I mean part of the last I suppose 3-4 years, 5 years that I've been on this healing journey. where, okay, it started with this researcher at UE going through these monuments that were on campus. And there were names of people who were enslaved every time there was an Aki tree. So there was one set of research done and they put these Christian names for these enslaved people on this marker, this monument, you want to call it. But this researcher went back and did further research and somehow found the African day names that the mothers of these people would give them to push back against them being named these Eurocentric Christian names. So that's how names like Kujo and Kofi and whatnot ended up still being in like our lexicon, being here now. And in researching what those names meant, I felt really inspired by that, which is where Zenzi came from me, which is a derivative of Zenzile, which means she who overcomes life's obstacles and makes a way for herself. I was like, yes, I given myself a day name. Like that's my nom de resistance. That's my Negmao of the plantation name, like for myself, because they believe, these African mothers believe there was so much power in just articulating those names that you were calling forth the energy of the name when you said it, right? So that's one thing. And so where I live now, there's a plantation down the road, Mamhu Gardens. And I've been finding out that here was a hot spot with Neg Mawa and Negress Mawa who are burning down the plantation and things. So there's a tour heritage gardens and whatnot, and the owners say, oh, it was destroyed, only to find out that is a bunch of brigands and Negmawa who burnt it down. It wasn't destroyed, they burnt it. So there are people who we're discovering now, like one named Flor Boagayad, who was a mulatress who was in the house, enslaved, working in the house, and would have been raped multiple times by her owner. And she became part of the Neg Mawa, the Negress Mawa, and she came back, killed him, burned down the plantation. Like, yes, that's a story. I want to tell that. You know, there's another one who there's a deposition about her. She ended up being killed, but the thing that stands out in this deposition is that she refused to be enslaved. Her owner keeps on saying she refused to do what he wanted her to do. He would tell her do X, she would not do it. Like even under these conditions, these women had agency, they exercised it, and they were in control of, like, she wanted to die off her feet. So my theory is she poisoned herself. And so this thing would have happened before they were able to do any kind of toxicology reports or anything like that. I am deeply inspired by these stories now as they're surfacing. And I know, you know, people are tired of, I guess, there's one type of slavery narrative that keeps on being fed to us, but there's the other perspective of these narratives from the point of view of the people who lived it that hasn't been told. So I'm excited to continue to dig these up, get inspired by them, and like the right one will speak to me to be able to tell something that's inspiring and is from the inside out. So that's my response to that question.
No, I think I was, as you were just talking about it, I had all these images in my head, and like I saw her standing out the front just with the whole house, like the whole plantation ablaze behind her, you know, like
behind a blaze.
And you know, when you're thinking about, like, you know, 12 Years a Slave came to my mind, and what we see the female character going through in that, which she's just like repeatedly raped and she's beaten in this brutal way, and there's almost this kind of like, I don't know, like violent,
gratuitous,
like,
yes,
thing that,
suffering porn, like, yes.
Yeah, and you're just like, you know, it gets like painful just seeing this side of the story all the time, like these kinds of stories. And this is something why, you know, why us at HFF started this festival and why we think this is so important. Like this is crucial to our psyche, to our collective awareness, to where we are going as societies, as women, as men, as people. Like our stories inform the worlds that we build, right? If you're always seeing women subjugated in a certain way, young women are going to think that that's the role. If you see women in these powerful positions, young women are going to be able to create that imagination for themselves. So you know, our you know, I always go on about this. My team is probably like, oh my God, this again. Because I'm always just like,
chat. And you have some nice questions.
Everything, they're fundamental to our, like, to our collective and our personal identities and to how we live and work in the world. And who gets to be making those stories are the people who control that narrative, right? So that's why it's so essential that more women, you know, are able to contribute, are able to be like, you know, no, we are also this, we are also that. We can't constantly be defined by men, right, who don't really like necessarily get us, or who are looking at us through this, you know, one-dimensional gaze. So I jumped in, but
there are some crazy, really cool questions happening in the chat.
Does anybody else want to address the
biopic?
Yeah.
Or
I mean,
you know, I think my next film I actually want to do it about a woman politician, and I think Mia Motley's story would be cool to do at some point. I don't think that's what I'm gonna do for that film, but I would love to see like a woman in politics, and that's
that's true, you know, actually.
I'm loving this. Yes. This is stuff that, like, you know, both of you saying that, you're like, I'm like, wait, why? Have you guys seen I May Destroy You?
We can't see it here yet. I haven't been able to see it here yet. So that's the thing.
I May Destroy You, because it's one of those things that you watch it and you're like, this doesn't exist, and why doesn't it exist? You know? And both of you guys, like what you've just said, you're like, this doesn't exist. And I'm really excited for the possibility of where we're going. Like, I don't even know if the world is ready. You know what I mean? Because like, we have some awesome questions there. Like,
some really cool questions in the chat. And thanks, Taitu. My friend Taitu Heron, who's a gender activist, said this is a really good conversation.
Oh,
I'm really glad she's listening. She's awesome.
Thank you for being here. Where should we start?
There was something I wanted to mention. But yeah, the chat question.
You want to say it, or? Okay, we'll continue with the question. I was just saying, you wanted to say something? You wanted to mention something?
Oh, earlier, no, just as I mentioned, Taitu, and we had mentioned the Me Too movement. I think it's really important for women to talk to other women about their experiences, because what you think is only happening to you, there's so much strength that you get when you realize, oh, you're not the only one who experienced this. And so for me, a big part of like my gaining strength through solidarity came through the Tambourine Army, that movement that was happening. Actually, before Me Too was happening, there was Life in Leggings happening in Barbados and the Tambourine Army stuff happening in Jamaica. And there was a circle, a healing circle within that group. And there were women within that circle who had been violated in ways that you could not imagine, having to get reconstructive surgery on their privates and stuff because things were so. And the fact that they were able to wake up, show up, exist in the world, continue to live and thrive and excel, that it gives me goosebumps now to even mention it. But just knowing that I had access to women like that, like touch this person, that there are people out there who have that strength, it gives you a lot of strength to deal with your own stuff, you know? Yeah. So I definitely feel that we need to share our experiences with each other and create safe spaces with each other within the industry, within the creative field, because you might help somebody like not go through some bullshit that you went through just because you shared your story and tell them next time this is what you should do, you know? Because there were so many instances where like I had to forgive myself for not saying anything, because I would be like, this is not really happening. That's some Twilight Zone stuff. I'm not even going to deal with this. But looking back, my silence made me complicit, you know, like people think when you don't say anything that you're agreeing to stuff. So we need to talk to each other more. We really, really, really do.
Absolutely. And I think that there is a really important distinction that you just made there, like, you know, between framing it as victims versus framing it as survivors, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It changes the whole framework, definitely. There was a question in the chat.
Yes. Rory asks, what are your thoughts on representation of women in Caribbean music videos? Kavana has put out some great songs about treating women with respect. Do you feel that artists perpetuate stereotypes by playing into them in order to be successful?
I have a kind of interesting perspective on this through taking my gender studies classes, whereas I went in thinking that, oh, everybody's objectifying Caribbean women. And I think, I don't know if it was Dr. Carolyn Cooper, or I can't remember the other name, but Jamaican feminist theorists who studied the dancehall space and were saying on a day-to-day basis, these are women whose sexual expression is kind of like they're trying to silence it and oppress it, but here's this space where they're liberated, where they can express themselves sexually and freely. So I had to sit and think, well, you know, and I think at the time we were talking about the film Dancehall Queen, I had to sit and think, you know, is there power and agency for a woman to find in that space and through those things, or is it always gonna be that women are being objectified? And I think it does tie up a lot to do with the gaze and who is filming, who is representing, who is taking the power at the end of the day to portray these things, and if every party involved has some say in how they're being represented. So I'm still in between, but I think that the you know,
I get you with that one.
Made some good points. Like they went in the, it's agency for some women, you know, to feel liberated. I don't know.
I mean, Shanique,
it's problematic because sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask Shanique because she's an incredible musician. And your artist name is actually Girl, right? And
yes.
Like how would you respond to this question?
I would say yes, I've seen it. I mean, we've all seen where, you know, women have been used in that light to further sell a product, to sell a song for marketing purposes. But this is where I'm coming from with that. Just the same way that the men who are part of these projects are using the women in this light, women gave consent. So I don't know, a lot of people don't want to hear that. They're like, but the women, I don't know if they always did, but some of them gave consent. Some of them were okay with it. Some of them said yes. So I think we have to look at it from that standpoint as well. Can't just look at it from the standpoint of the men using the women alone, which is something to address, yes, but we also have to look at the other side, that women said yes to this, women are okay with this, and then we have to look at why they said yes. Why are they okay with it?
And are they really okay with it too, is the next question.
And are they really okay with it? Yeah, it's a very touchy topic for me, yeah, because being in the industry and seeing it, you know, firsthand, there are a lot of questions that you want to ask that you just don't get to ask.
Yeah.
And so it makes it very tricky to answer in certain situations. But guess what? I want the same answers that you do. I want the exact same answers. I want the same questions answered as a lot of people. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a very tricky one. A very tricky one, because
it is.
When you think about dancehall and what dancehall represents, I was watching this girl the other day in Me, a fabulous Caribbean dancer, and she loves wine. She can bubble and all these things. And someone said something to her, and she said, if you notice when I post my videos of me whining or being expressive, I'm not showing particular parts of my body, or I'm not, you know, that's not the part that is being highlighted in the camera. And, you know, when you think of dancehall, dancehall is like Dancehall Queen is a perfect representation of what dancehall is. It's the costumes, the way we dress, the fashion, how you dance, how you move your waist. That's something that people identify Caribbean women with, you know, the how well you can whine and move your waistline and all these things. But as Shanique rightfully said, when we look at some of these videos and we feel like women are being objectified, they agree to do this. This is something that they enjoy doing. It's it's a really touchy topic, because then if you decide to go deeper and then ask the question, why, you lay down on the ground and open up your foot and make a man jump from the top of a sound box right in between your legs? Why, like, that has to hurt? Is it just for the fame, and is it just for show? But what does that mean? What exactly are you saying? Rough sex, that's what you're selling? Is that a thing? I think that's a very loaded question, and it has like is a essay type question that would part A, B, C, D. You can't just answer that just off the bat. And what
Right.
Melanie said, when you think about gender studies and persons who actually study dancehall and study women in dancehall and men in dancehall, then you get a whole different perspective.
Yeah, and I will say this, if I can add this very quickly. Sometimes it has to do with that woman embracing her sexuality, because as Shantol rightfully said, the dancehall culture is a particular culture that celebrates certain things when it comes on to women. So for me, in some situations, it comes down to the why, the woman's why. What is your why? And that's why, as she said, it's such a loaded question for me. Michelle.
Can it I'm laughing because I just remember something. I mean, I'm going there because part of being a liberated woman is taking the things that they told you needed to stay in the non-public domain and being able to talk about it, like buying pads in public or condoms and tampons. I'm going to talk about even in your own sex life. I think it comes down to how it is that we are trained to perform for other people's pleasure that might not be ours. I have a very weird tale and I'm going to tell it. Like I had this experience with a lover saying to me, stop, why are you fighting with me? Because I was performing, I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do as a Caribbean woman, like in bed, and like you're supposed to do this and that or whatever. And the dude was like, hello, please, like, don't hurt me, kind of stuff. So back to the dance hall and the video light and stuff. It's about attention, but who's gay? Sometimes it might be yours. There are instances where I was definitely having a great time for myself, but there definitely was a period in my life where I was like, yeah, like, am I actually enjoying this? Like, I have to do whatever. That's not pleasurable for me. So, we have to stop and take stock. Who is this for? Is it for me? Or is it for them? Because we've been trained to privilege their pleasure. Their everything comes first. And like, we have to undo that, like reverse that, be honest about it and like not, Someone asked in the chat about a film that had too much of a male gaze. And definitely to me, Cuties. You also saw that film on Netflix, that whole controversy over those little girls who taught them to. Melanie, I see you respond. I was livid because to me, she could have done, and people are making excuses and saying this is a first-time filmmaker trying to think the issue. I watched this thing and I was like, no effing way. This is insane. And like, go ahead. Yeah, talk.
Young women and sexualizing young women's bodies, but she did that by making the film about talking about this.
Exactly
what you were trying.
And the angles in the finale, the angles all up in these young girls' crotches. I was like, yo, no, she could have told this story and hit the issue, and because it is an issue that these young girls are doing all of these super sexy things. But yo, the final, oh my God,
Wait,
it's so cringe worthy. And
can I just jump in for those of us who haven't seen it? Like, I could just see you guys have gotten so animated and so passionate about this. Like, can you give us you're both like, but can you give us a little context? Like contextualize the film a little bit first.
Melanie, go ahead.
No, it's a French film. Maybe who's trying to talk about, how these younger women watch other women on screen dancing and try to mimic them and imitate them, and it's about this group of girls, they're trying to win a dance competition or something. And
they're like 11, they're not even 12, they're not even they're not even tweens, they're like young. Go ahead.
The people in like a music video, a dance hall music video, the little kids were pretty much doing. Like, it was, who made this? Who made this? Who said this was okay?
Like, remember that move Spice and them would do with the thing, and it had and like the thing, the ground, just really hyper sexualized stuff, and a lot of it you could see came from, you know, dancehall culture, etc. And it was just really problematic because in some states, I think it was in Texas, was it, Melanie? Somewhere initially people were like, no, this is child pornography, they need to ban it. And so this big conversation happened. That's how I heard of the film. I was reading the trades and saw this whole thing about cuties, like whatever. Oh, it was the marketing picture initially. On Netflix, they had an image of the girl stooping or something, and it was like crotch showing or something like that. And that was, yeah, man, like that was insensitive or whatever. And then someone, I think it was in Texas or somewhere, they were like, no, this is child pornography. They need to like do an injunction so they don't show the film or whatnot. So then I watched it, it played, and me and my friends watched it. We talked about it in our little chat. And some people were like, oh, they don't see any problem with it. But I could not understand how you could, to talk about objectification and over-sexualization, you did not have to, because you did this to somebody's child. Somebody's child who acted in that film had the very experience, because your camera person was all up. Melanie, you're on mute. I think you're muted. I can see you doing that, but I can't hear you.
No, I'm not on mute. But yeah, I just didn't understand how this passed. You know, you got to go through certain stages when you make a film. I just didn't know how it got approval after a certain stage. After someone looked at the script and said,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I completely agree that film
Yep.
needs to be banned. I'm not all for censorship, but that film needs to be banned.
But certain things, yeah, when it comes to kids, yeah, that one crossed a line for me, definitely. So yeah, that was the question in the chat. If there was a film I could think of that was way too much male gaze, and that one definitely was, even though it was a female director at the helm, I feel like there was some, I don't know, somebody missed something big time.
Well, I'll be giving that one a miss then. I will not be clicking play on that one. Wow. Because, I mean, you know, I like, especially when you're dealing with minors on set, there's supposed to be all of these things in place to protect them, like, you know, like that's like a unionized thing. There's guidelines, like hours they can work, things they can't do. So I'm very interested as to, was it a Netflix production?
Netflix bought it. I don't know.
Did it eventually? I think it was, you know, or did they buy it? I don't know. But you do some research, it is there, all the controversy.
Yeah.
Cuties is the English name.
Interesting. We got a couple more questions here. Question for everyone. The Karukurament, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Karukurament podcast people are tuned in. The podcast is about analyzing representation of the Caribbean in film and TV. They ask, what kind of structure do you think we need to create a strong Caribbean film industry? I suppose like business structure they're thinking, or just what does that kind of provoke for you guys?
The first thing I think about when I think of structure in the film industry, especially in my country, is unionization. I didn't understand how important it was to have representation until it was way too late, you know? And this is something that Shanique would face all the time, being a musician and not having a particular structure or a union to defend us. Aiko, you were just saying with kids, and this is something across the board. When you're working, you have certain times you should be working, you have what you should be paid, there should be certain insurance, things that take care of you while you're on set, and this is for cast and crew across the board. We don't have a proper structure to take care of our talents. And so someone will call you and say, hey, we want you to come. If you're a musician, we want you to come and perform a full band set for 1 hour. And, oh, but we don't have a budget. And I'm like, but if you don't have a budget, why are you calling? If you don't have a budget for entertainment, why are you calling? And these, they always have entertainment on the agenda because they can't have a function without entertainment, you know? And beyond that, just when you're working on a set, how do you protect your talents? How do you protect the crew, you know, in terms of negotiating contracts? So you ensure that you're being treated fairly. A lot of those things we don't, and I think because we're a growing film industry, a lot of things we aren't yet exposed to. And so that's one of the main things. That's something that has been affecting us and will continue to affect us until we can create some type of structure or union to protect creatives in the industry.
Mhm. Yep, I agree, because to some extent, people, even though, as Shantol says, we're a growing industry, people still look at it as us doing a thing, or us just doing a hobby or doing something on the side. And so I think the minute we all kind of come to a general consensus that, okay, this is what we do for a living, this is what we do to feed ourselves and our families, then and only then can we kind of come together and say, all right, we kind of need to put certain things in place. Yeah.
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 Because it's really easy to get taken advantage of. Like, you know,
Yep.
I've had those
Very.
experiences, especially when you're young in your career and you're trusting, you know, and you don't know what to look out for yet. You don't know the sharks in the water, you know, and you have to just learn the hard way. Michelle.
Yes.
The sharks in the water and learning the hard way. I think if we spoke to each other more, we would save people from having those experiences. Like, there's something I'm still reckoning with that I need to deal with down the line. But I think in terms of representation of the Caribbean in cinema and structure, there needs to be a more professional and not these who know you, who I know, whatever things that happen where certain people get green lit and other people don't. Like, there needs to be a bigger diversity of people getting to tell their stories. Because when I really started to analyze, like, but wait, who's telling whose stories? I see a lot of uptown telling downtown, and people that have nothing to do with people's lives telling stories about people that they wouldn't talk to in real life. And I'm like, yo, but really, what is going on? And then you look at like the whole, just the plantation again, and how all of this came from colonialism, that a certain class of people have access to certain things and then think they're entitled to it and nobody else is. And nobody is questioning this. Everybody is just like, yeah, man, I them forget it, or yeah, that one, yeah, that man can go through, or whatever and stuff, because their parents are this, that, or whatever and stuff. And to me, the time for that is gone, long gone. So I'm all for democratizing and demystifying this whole film thing, sharing knowledge as much as possible. You know, we like to think, oh, we have to really make it big and go and do this humongous thing before we can come back and share. I disagree with that. I think like you learn along the way, and like there's somebody coming up behind you and you can tell them, hey, I saw that obstacle, look out for it. You might have a different experience, but let me just tell you, let me just share. You know, I feel there's not enough of that. We still being competitive and trying to push that other person down because, you know, it's me and me alone. And that comes straight from the plantation. We need to get off the plantation in terms of who it is that we think should be allowed to tell what and have access to what. I think that's a big part of diversifying what kind of images, what kinds of stories are told about the Caribbean from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I think also like there's a thing as well. I don't know, maybe if it's like a small island thing or maybe something like small community thing that tends to happen where it's like a small pond, big fish type of thing, you know, like there's kind of like, you know, there's, I feel like what I've noticed is a lot of characters who kind of, they seem to be motivated by just wanting to be the kind of king of the castle, or like, you know, I'm the big boss, or I'm in control, or, you know, and you know, and it's hard because obviously, like, you know, competition is something that's biologically
needed.
like,
It helps.
in us, right? Like it's a part of our makeup. But I think if we want to evolve as a species, we need to kind of, and the ways that they also like justify these things get very complicated, like, you know, why they are better, why they are more deserving, why they are more entitled. And like you say, it's very like, you know, it is a lot of like plantation kind of mentality in a lot of ways. And I just don't think, you know, for the world that we want to build, that it really has any place, you know. If we're really,
Right.
if we're really all
Totally
about
agree.
like, uplifting, you know, because a lot of people too, it's interesting as well, because even within these like woke movements, it's so interesting because sometimes you find this as well. It's like just another space in which people are kind of competing for power and status, right? So, but I think, you know, you find your crew, you find the people who are motivated by the things that you can relate to, and you try to live by that kind of example. We've got another message. This is from Via Strawn. Is there anything specific that you are working on or involved in right now that you think is poised to open up more opportunities for females to have a stronger presence in the Caribbean film industry, be they actresses, filmmakers, producers, writers, etc.? And this is actually a perfect segue into what I was gonna ask to like kind of wrap us up as well, in terms of actionable things. What do you guys think?
I think it's high time we have like a Caribbean
Sorry,
women in
Melanie,
film
were you trying to?
across the board.
Melanie, are you muted? Like you I see you talking, but nothing
Yeah,
is
because we
coming
don't
out.
have
Not muted.
right.
We're hearing you now. We're hearing you now.
Hearing
We
you
can
now.
hear you now.
Really speaking really softly. But I'm heading into production for a short film that I'm making right now in St. Vincent. It's on the team. I'm trying to get as many women as possible. It's me and a producer. I don't know if you know Ramola Lucas. Anybody? She's awesome.
Mhm.
We're working on this piece together, and it's I guess all women cast. It's about two queer women who fall in love and a grandmother as well. So it's just I usually keep three women in my films. I'm noticing a pattern. I don't know. And I'm gonna direct it. I'm also gonna be cinematographer, and I'm trying to get more women on the team. Finding a sound woman is so hard. Like I don't know if anybody knows any women in sound, but if you find like more with the technical roles, it's so hard to find women, you know. And everybody, when they speak of like say cinematographer, they would say, oh, when you find him or he, or, and they never gender cinematographer to be a woman, and that's why I insist on keeping that role. But I'm just rereading the question again. Open up opportunities. I don't know if it'll open up opportunities, but I think it's so important for people to see a production that's just led by women and made about women and for women. So yeah.
Well, I think it does open opportunities because you'd be employing people on your sets, you know, and that's, you know, people make connections and they earn some money, and you know, and that just builds to the whole business of it as well. So
yeah.
I think what would also create an opportunity for you or for me, somebody, is if there was a database. Like there's the Brown Girls Doc Mafia that like helps me. Like, I read stories in there about crazy acts of selfishness that happen in the industry that I'll be like, oh my God, this actually happens. And the women are talking about it in solidarity and telling each other, hey, well, you could do this or do that, you know, to solve the problem. So if there was a database like a Caribbean Women in Film, and we had a registry and we had meetups, so, you know, you would be able to know who's maybe an actress in St. Lucia that you can get to come across, or somebody doing sound or what, but that we are connected to each other, because it's an idea, I think, that has definitely found its time. You know, 10 years ago, there were not so many of us like doing this. I remember going to Black Star Film Festival and pitching it to them, and they were like, yeah, you could start that here. And I thought about it, I was like, that's a lot of work. There aren't really that many of us. Okay, let me, like, you know, head down, but it's time, let's do it. You know, Ramola has been doing some really cool stuff, trying to bring audiences and filmmakers and people together. Like, we need to just widen the network and know each other and help each other out. So I think definitely some kind of professional organization amongst the women that delineates the skill sets that we have, and we fraternize. What's the word? Sororitize, not fraternize. Link up and share. Yeah.
And I think that interregional collaboration, that's something I believe in as well. Like Ramola, she's going to be coming from Guyana, where she's based right now. So I believe in us helping each other out on our films and
Absolutely.
moving. You know, if we're gonna say we're Caribbean women making Caribbean films, like, it is important to have that exchange and interregional collaboration.
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. Years ago, when like we started doing New Caribbean Cinema, I named it New Caribbean Cinema because the idea was to do the region. We would start with Jamaica, then do St. Lucia, do St. Vincent, do, you know, across the Caribbean. And for many reasons, that didn't quite happen, but we are here and we can make it happen. Anyway, the point is to move things forward. So definitely, it's supposed to be collaboration across borders, across islands.
Yeah, I think the best way to tackle that situation, I mean, I talk about Sprinter because I'm so proud of that film. 90% of the cast and crew was local, you know, and so the best way, because we can get opportunities like individual opportunities, and we go out and it becomes, you know, internationally recognized, and, you know, it still doesn't benefit others, you know, in our region just by us doing that one thing. And so I think we have to, and I keep saying it, we have to create our own opportunities. And like Michelle said, you know, if we can create a database where we can reach out to, you know, our people regionally and collaborate, that's the best way that we can ensure that we are working and we continue to work. That way we can control the narrative, you know, and we put out our own stories, and we are, each time we work, we're learning, we're growing, we're developing our craft, we're developing ourselves. And so, you know, I have an opportunity coming up which could open doors for a lot of people, but there's no guarantee. And so how can I ensure that doors do get open? What kind of initiative can I create from that one opportunity to assist other Caribbean filmmakers who I want to be able to, you know, do an international film and use your own accent, you know, have your character be based on your, you know, your Caribbean heritage. So you're not doing something that is completely out of the ordinary, that's something that's not accustomed to, you know, a Caribbean woman. So we definitely need to, as I said, just collaborate more. I think that's the best way to ensure that we continue to work and we continue to tell our own stories.
I don't hear anything.
Shanique, you have anything you want to add?
Shantol kind of took it all out of my head. I second it. I'm all for collaboration. That's how I met you. Happily so. Good times, good times, good times. And it was a very, 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 very amazing experience. I want more of that. I want more of that for me. I want more of that for the other actresses coming up in the industry from all across the Caribbean, because you just learn so much. You learn so much about yourself. You learn so much about other Caribbean people, and you know their cultures and what they have to contend with on a daily basis, and just other cultures within your own like space. So I second it. I second that through and through.
So, you know, just in terms of the festival and what we're trying to do, part of what we want to do is create the chance for more women to even start to imagine that maybe filmmaking is something they would want to do. And so we want to do that. Something I want to try and work on getting funding for is a sort of women-focused filmmaking workshops, you know, for like young teens or young female adults. And you know, just to sort of like, because of course, like we find that in St. Vincent as well, the majority of the people are men that are making work, and that's, you know, not, you know, unique to St. Vincent. That's throughout the Caribbean, that's throughout the world. But like we mentioned before, it's very important that we that our perspective is like involved in the image production that is occurring. So for whatever reasons there are that more men are doing this, whatever, I want to try and like create a space where women can feel supported and encouraged. And maybe, you know, from there they'd be like, wow, this is something I could do as a career. Or maybe it would just be a chance for them to express something in their personal life and help with their self-actualization in a certain way. I think making things can be very healing. So that's something, yeah, from the festival side, that I think education is really important, and finding in creating like sustainability, and even in terms of like trying to create crews to, you know, that you can actually like you're saying, you know, it's hard to find maybe sound people or this and that. So like specialized training programs as well, because there is going to be, I think, you know, we're moving, there is going to be more stuff coming in, there is going to be more investment, there is going to be more eyes looking to the Caribbean, especially now that, you know, this whole sort of diversity thing has become, you know, a lot of companies now want to appear to be supporting these voices, and, you know, and whether it's, you know, genuine or not, there might be opportunities there, right? So so yeah, so I think that you know, I'm excited about where we're going, and it's been really blessed me by being here, and with all of your experience and your wisdom and your insights. And you know, if there's anything you want to say before we wrap up. Karen from Soca Gal, who's also partnered with us, who works with the festival and also partnered with us on today, has said, look at these beautiful queens, sending love to everyone. Thank you for being here and sharing your gifts and experience with us. So
thank you. I just wanted to add to that, one of the things I think we need to do very quickly is normalize creativity and the creative industry. We have when I left high school and I was determined to be an actress and I decided that this is my path, my father was so opposed to it. He's like, you cannot, acting is not a career. It is just not something you do in the Caribbean. You don't act. If you want a career, you have to become a teacher or a lawyer or a doctor or a nurse. That's traditionally what you do. And so I think a lot of women and men as well, you know, even if they want to venture into the creative industry, there's a lot of noise, you know, saying this, you know, this is, what's the point in doing this? There's no money to get from it. There's nothing, there's no growth in this kind of thing. And so I think we need to quickly normalize the creative industry. I think people need to become aware that this is in fact a career path. This is something that you can have a livelihood from, sustainable living. And then because you have some miserable people doing some 9 to 5, you know, some miserable people doing some 9 to 5. And that's why when you go to a food place or certain places, you get really bad customer service because they do not want to be there. That's not what they should be doing. but they don't see an avenue to express their creativity. They don't see, okay, I leave high school, how do I, further my education or further my growth and development as an artist, And so we need to quickly formalize that aspect of the industry, as you said, Aiko, and I'd be happy to participate in workshops or whatever developmental initiative to normalize the creative industry.
No, I'm really glad that you said that, because we deal with
Across
the same
the
thing in
region.
St. Vincent as well.
Across the region, yeah.
Yeah. And I think like,
Definitely.
go ahead, Michelle.
No, yeah, I was just saying, like, I really had been, or I still am, regardless of no longer being with this particular collective. My dream has always been to, even here in this space, to host creative women, like have these residencies where at one residency, it can be about acting, it can be about directing or whatnot, but that you have women in like creative spaces where you can spend a week without having to worry about your child and just focusing on your creativity and stuff. You can spend a week in solidarity with women and talking about the ways in which, we've internalized things and how we don't do certain things and how that's specifically gendered, but just having that sorority in different locations. In 1 year, it can be St. Vincent, 1 year, it can be Grenada, another year, and being able to build across the region, because we're small in terms of numbers. Like, I feel like it's important to start thinking broader than individual islands, because the world out there, we're still small. Like, it's one geocultural block. Granted, we are very different, so there needs to be like diversity in those stories, but we need to think broader than just these shores, like, our individual island shores. Yeah.
I want to just, again, thank you all so much for being here. And I hope that this is just the start of, more of these kinds of conversations and actions. And like I said, the festival, we have a mandate to support women's voices. And I really want to, find more women filmmakers in St. Vincent specifically, and also throughout the region. And just hearing all of your perspective and opinions and your advice about what we need, because I know you've all worked in the industry, you know what it's like, it's firsthand experience. So all of that's really valuable for building this. And yeah, and I can't wait to see more of your work and support that in the future as well. And yeah, if anyone has anything else they want to close out, it doesn't look like we have any more questions at this point.
Just thank you so much for this. This was so refreshing. I know I needed this today. It was very, very, very refreshing. And I'm happy that we could have this type of coming together where we're from all over the Caribbean and we're here talking about our shared experiences in our, our individual landscapes. It's very, very lovely. It's very lovely. And I look forward to more conversations like this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a bit of a silver lining because we had to, obviously we couldn't do the physical festival, but there's all this amazing connection that has going virtual.
I can't wait until we can do things again. I have a comment from my friend who says, and we need to remember to lobby the government and the institutions to like put in the infrastructure so that we can thrive as people in creative industries. That needs to be a big part of what we do. Agreed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, everyone. Thank you. Oh, you want to say something?
For having me on this discussion. I hope to keep in touch with all of y'all. And hopefully someday we can collaborate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you. This was amazing.
Keep in touch, everyone.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Bye.